From the vast expanse of space, where new forms of power are being imagined, to the intricate dance of global politics, and even the subtle signals reshaping our daily interactions, today's deep dive is truly a whirlwind. We're going to be talking about revolutionary technologies, conflicts that continue to redraw maps and lives, and economic currents that, well, they demand our closest attention.
Indeed. We've gathered quite a stack of sources, everything from, scientific journals like Popular Mechanics and Science Daily to major news outlets such as Al Jazeera, the BBC, TechCrunch, the Wall Street Journal, and RT, among others. Our mission really is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from this rich tapestry of information, connecting the dots between seemingly disparate events. We aim to offer multiple perspectives and highlight those surprising insights, those aha moments that leave you feeling genuinely well-informed without feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, so get ready as we unpack everything from NASA's mind-bending nuclear battery and AI's radical impact on hiring to the intensifying geopolitical chess game in Ukraine and Gaza, the shifting global economic tides, and critical health and environmental updates that impact all of us. Let's jump right in. #tag section 1. The frontier of innovation space, artificial intelligence, and autonomous technology. Let's launch right into what sounds, frankly, like pure science fiction, because our first story is truly extraordinary. #tag subsection, powering the future, far and wide. Okay, we're talking about a battery that could provide power for 433 years. I mean, seriously, that's almost half a millennium from a single power source. What immediately grips me about this is just the sheer longevity. Imagine the missions we could send into deep space or the remote scientific outposts on Earth with that kind of enduring power. It's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, embarking on this ambitious project to demonstrate a truly revolutionary nuclear battery.
It really is a monumental leap forward. And, it builds on NASA's extensive experience. For decades, spacecraft have successfully used what are called radioisotope power systems, or RPS. These systems generate electricity from the natural decay of plutonium-238, and they've been incredibly reliable for missions like the Voyager probes, which, amazingly, are still sending back data from interstellar space well beyond our solar system.
Right, incredible.
But current RPS technology, while effective, it does have limitations in terms of both its lifespan and its energy efficiency. The groundbreaking aspect of this new initiative, as highlighted in Popular Mechanics, is its aim to harness not just plutonium, but also alternative isotopes. These alternatives could potentially offer even longer operational lives and more reliable energy output, all without needing additional fuel. The insight here is that this isn't just about extending mission life. It's fundamentally rethinking the energy paradigm for extreme, long-duration applications.
So this is far more than just a minor upgrade then. It's a foundational shift in how we power things. And the implications, like you said, stretch well beyond deep space. I'm thinking about remote Earth applications in really hostile environments, maybe rapid disaster recovery efforts, or even providing essential power to areas completely devoid of traditional energy resources. This nuclear battery could genuinely be a game changer for critical infrastructure.
Exactly.
It showcases the versatility and profound long-term impact of pushing these technological boundaries. It makes you envision, I don't know, self-sufficient outposts in the Arctic or deep-sea research stations that can operate for decades without resupply.
Precisely. And this persistent drive for observation and access, it extends to our understanding of the cosmos itself. The James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST, it just continues to deliver these awe-inspiring insights. It recently captured stunning new images of a triple star system, revealing intricate details that showcase the sheer beauty of these celestial bodies. The image, taken above a nearby nebula, highlights the intense brightness emitted by the three stars, which are gravitationally bound and orbit each other. This is more than just a pretty picture, though. It significantly enhances our understanding of stellar formation and development in these highly dynamic environments. It's a powerful reminder of how much more there is to learn about the universe and how our instruments are constantly pushing the boundaries of what we can see and comprehend.
Right. And speaking of pushing boundaries, while we push the boundaries of observation, SpaceX is simultaneously pushing the boundaries of global connectivity. They successfully launched another Falcon 9 rocket from Florida, deploying 28 Starlink satellites into orbit. This is a significant step in their ongoing efforts to expand their internet broadband service globally. The aim, of course, is providing high-speed internet access to underserved regions, including rural and remote areas. So from centuries-long power enabling new scientific frontiers to connecting the most isolated parts of our planet, innovation truly seems to know no bounds. #subsection. AI reshaping industries and daily life. Okay, transitioning from the vastness of space to the rapidly evolving landscape of our daily lives, artificial intelligence, or AI, is truly at the forefront. We've got several stories that show just how much AI is reshaping industries, and even something as personal as finding a job.
Yeah, what's truly revolutionary here is the sheer breadth of AI's application. You see it from revolutionizing recruitment to streamlining logistics and even powering strategic infrastructure. OpenAI, for instance, has announced the launch of its AI-powered hiring platform. It's set to debut in mid-2026. And this platform is positioned to directly rival established players, like LinkedIn, leveraging advanced data analytics and machine learning to streamline the entire hiring process.
Okay.
Their vision is really to enhance user experiences through personalized features and real-time feedback, specifically addressing what they see as shortcomings in current job matching algorithms, which often rely maybe too much on keywords or simplistic criteria.
That sounds incredibly efficient, potentially. But also, for many people, I imagine, a little bit unsettling. An AI having such a significant role in who gets a job or who even gets an interview, it makes you really think about the potential for things to go wrong or for biases to creep in.
You're hitting on a crucial point there. While this platform promises to revolutionize talent discovery, it simultaneously raises a really important ethical question. How do we ensure that the black box of AI doesn't inadvertently perpetuate existing societal biases, especially when something as fundamental as employment is at stake?
Right.
The key insight here, and this is critical, is that AI systems, by their very nature, learn from historical data. If that data reflects past human biases, say, favoring certain demographics and hiring the AI will inherently bake those biases into its decisions unless it's actively and ethically engineered out. This requires not just monitoring, but proactive design for fairness.
So it's not just watching it, it's building it right from the start.
Exactly. OpenAI has committed to addressing these issues, emphasizing safety and inclusivity, reinforced by partnerships with industry giants like Microsoft. But the challenge of algorithmic bias remains a significant concern across the entire AI job recruitment space. It's not unique to OpenAI.
That's a powerful and vital distinction, that biases are baked in unless actively removed. And we're seeing similar efficiency drives in other sectors too, right?
We are. A new startup called Augment, founded by Haresh Abbott, who co-founded Deliver, has successfully raised $25 million in seed funding. Their goal is to enhance productivity in the logistics sector. Their AI assistant, charmingly dubbed Augie, is designed to automate routine tasks that logistics professionals typically handle, things like data entry, email management, customer communications.
Boggy.
Yeah. Abbott envisions Augie collaborating seamlessly with human workers to reduce waste and inefficiencies in the massive, approximately $900 billion logistics industry. And this isn't just a niche player. Major companies like FedEx and UPS have already invested heavily in AI-driven solutions, signaling a clear industry-wide trend toward automation.
It's happening everywhere.
Absolutely. And on a larger, more strategic scale, Europe is making significant strides in AI infrastructure with the launch of the Jupyter supercomputer. Positioned as the largest AI machine in Europe, Jupyter aims to dramatically enhance the continent's capabilities in AI development and research. European nations are, striving to keep pace with the rapid advancements being made by the United States and China. So this represents a long-term commitment to bolstering AI infrastructure, facilitating improved AI training models and applications across various sectors.
So it's about having the computing power to actually run these big models.
Precisely. The insight here is that AI leadership isn't just about developing algorithms. It's about having the foundational computational power to train and deploy them at scale. That's become a critical aspect of geopolitical tech rivalry.
#TechShake subsection, digital privacy and market warnings. So what does all this AI innovation mean for our digital privacy? And how are markets reacting to this rapid change? It feels like a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, we're seeing new security features in our communication apps. On the other, we have tech leaders making claims that sometimes make security experts, well, raise an eyebrow. This is exactly what seems to be happening with X's new encrypted direct message feature, XChat. It began rolling out more broadly on September 4, 2025, transitioning from its beta phase. It emphasizes security and privacy, with features like vanishing messages and support for multimedia sharing. This is part of Elon Musk's ambitious plan to revolutionize communication on social platforms and directly compete with services like WhatsApp and Telegram. While initially limited to X Premium subscribers, it's now accessible to a larger audience.
Yeah, but the skepticism from security experts regarding Musk's description of Bitcoin-style encryption is indeed quite pronounced, and frankly, for good reason. It's crucial to understand the distinction here. Bitcoin utilizes robust cryptography for transactional security on a public, immutable ledger. It's primarily about verifying ownership and preventing double spending.
Okay.
True end-to-end encryption for messaging, like what Signal or WhatsApp aim for, means that only the sender and the intended recipient can read the messages. Not even the service provider can access the content. The concern is that Musk's phrasing, while perhaps intending to convey strong security, might mislead users into believing they have a level of uncompromised privacy equivalent to established end-to-end encrypted messaging services.
Right, sounds good, but what does it actually mean?
Exactly. The actual implementation could be significantly different or less secure in practice. And beyond the terminology, initial user reviews during the rollout have reported bugs and system instability, which could certainly hinder user adoption and satisfaction, irrespective of the underlying encryption claims.
It's always a challenge with new tech, isn't it? Balancing innovation with solid, reliable functionality, and importantly, clear communication about security. And speaking of new tech and challenges, the financial world is keeping a very close eye on the AI sector. Goldman Sachs has issued a cautionary note to investors in artificial intelligence stocks, suggesting the current AI market may be nearing its peak.
Indeed, the investment bank's analysts believe that enthusiastic investment in AI technologies has reached a level that could lead to overvaluation, predicting a potential downturn. This is a classic market cycle warning where rapid growth, often driven by hype and speculation, can sometimes lead to speculative bubbles that eventually correct themselves.
A reality check, maybe.
Possibly. The insight here is that even revolutionary technologies are subject to market dynamics and investor sentiment, which can sometimes outpace the actual immediate commercialization and profitability.
But then you have companies like NVIDIA, the leading graphics processing unit or GPU manufacturer, making a jaw-dropping projection regarding data center capital expenditures for the year 2030. They expect these expenditures to increase significantly as more businesses and industries leverage advanced AI and computational technologies. This solidifies NVIDIA's pivotal role and makes it, for some analysts at least, a no-brainer stock for potential investors.
Right, and what's truly fascinating here is the starkly contrasting sentiment. You've got a warning from Goldman Sachs balanced by NVIDIA's incredibly bullish, almost foundational outlook. This paradox forces us to ask a critical question about the true value and long-term sustainability of this AI revolution. Is it a speculative bubble destined to pop, or is it a fundamental shift in computing that justifies massive, sustained investment?
Hard to know right now.
Very. The insight is that the market is grappling with an unprecedented technological paradigm shift, making traditional valuation metrics challenging and leading to wildly different yet equally compelling projections from major financial players.
#, Section 2. Geopolitical crossroads, conflicts, alliances, and diplomatic chess. Now let's pivot from the exciting, sometimes volatile frontiers of technology to the often tense realities of our geopolitical landscape. We're seeing conflicts and alliances shifting on an almost daily basis, demanding our close attention and analysis. #, subsection. Ukraine on the brink. The situation in Ukraine remains incredibly volatile, defined by ongoing military actions and stark warnings from Moscow. The Russian Defense Ministry recently announced that Russian forces successfully destroyed a Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group attempting to cross the Dnipro River in Ukraine. Surveillance by Russian drone operators apparently identified a speedboat with Ukrainian soldiers near the river's mouth, leading to FPV, that's first-person view drones, executing strikes and sinking the boat. The ministry even released a video claiming the sabotage group was eliminated. This follows earlier reports from Russia's Federal Security Service of detaining Western-trained saboteurs in the Bryansk region of Russia, allegedly equipped with NATO military weapons and explosives. These aren't just isolated incidents. They contribute to a narrative of continuous border friction.
And these actions are, of course, accompanied by strong rhetoric. Russian President Vladimir Putin firmly declared that any Western forces deployed to Ukraine would be viewed as legitimate targets for Russian military action. He reiterated this at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russia. He characterized the West's involvement in Ukraine, particularly its push to integrate Ukraine into NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, as a critical factor in the ongoing conflict.
Okay.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov reinforced this, asserting that any foreign military presence near Russia's borders would be perceived as a direct threat. Now, it's important for our listeners to understand that Western media has been criticized by some, including Moscow, for at times misrepresenting Putin's statement as a threat against peacekeepers in a post-conflict scenario. His comments, however, were explicitly focused on wartime interventions. Putin maintained that once a peace settlement was achieved, the need for international peacekeepers would be moot.
So the timing is key during conflict versus after.
Precisely. Russia also announced plans to create its own buffer zone along its borders to protect civilians from Ukrainian attacks. The core insight here is that for Russia, the deployment of any foreign troops to Ukraine during ongoing hostilities represents a direct escalatory challenge, not a peacekeeping effort. This fundamentally shapes their response doctrine.
That distinction is crucial. And on the other side of this conflict, Ukrainian efforts to secure international support continue, albeit with, well, complex conditions. French President Emmanuel Macron recently expressed confidence in the United States' commitment to support Ukraine. Significantly, a meeting of 26 nations, including Canada, Australia, Japan, and mostly European countries, pledged troops to Ukraine. But only once fighting ceases. They're forming what they called a coalition of the willing for a reassurance force. Macron emphasized these troops would absolutely not be positioned on the front lines, and discussions with U.S. President Donald Trump centered on enhancing military support. Ukrainian President Zelensky expressed cautious optimism, calling it a pivotal step forward.
This collective pledge, while offering future reassurance, really highlights a critical shared dilemma among Western allies. How do you support Ukraine without direct military engagement that could provoke a wider conflict? The commitment only once fighting ceases reveals a deep reluctance to cross Russia's stated red lines, but simultaneously aims to deter future aggression.
A balancing act.
A very difficult one. However, this cautious approach has its internal tensions. EU officials are reportedly concerned that Germany, a key European player, may withdraw its support for these plans to deploy ground troops to Ukraine amid ongoing discussions of a potential ceasefire. An unnamed EU diplomat apparently emphasized Germany's need to maintain leadership status, while German Chancellor Friedrich Merz acknowledged no immediate plans to send troops, stating deployments could only be considered post-ceasefire. The insight here is that the path to any lasting peace is fraught with internal divisions and external threats. Even pledges of future support are contingent and subject to geopolitical recalculations, reflecting the profound challenges of unified international action in such a volatile situation.
Hashtag subsection. Middle East tensions. Moving to the Middle East, tensions in Gaza have escalated dramatically alongside significant diplomatic friction. The Israeli army recently announced it has captured 40% of Gaza City, which is the largest urban area in the besieged Gaza Strip, amidst intensified military operations.
And these military actions are undeniably having severe humanitarian consequences. Israeli airstrikes recently resulted in the deaths of at least 19 individuals, according to Gaza's Civil Defense Agency. In one particularly devastating incident reported, Israeli forces conducted an airstrike on the 12-story Mushtaha Tower in Gaza City, completely destroying it after apparently giving just a 15-minute evacuation warning.
15 minutes for a 12-story building? That's barely anything.
It's hard to imagine. This was one of the largest buildings and was situated close to a displacement camp sheltering many Palestinians. Amidst these developments, Hamas, the governing authority in Gaza, has released another video purportedly showing hostages taken during the hostilities. The situation has drawn increasing international condemnation directed at Israel regarding its military actions. Global concerns about humanitarian impacts and the safety of civilians are rising, prompting calls for a ceasefire and diplomatic solutions.
And Egypt, a crucial regional player, has taken a firm stance on potential displacement.
Absolutely. Egypt has unequivocally stated that it will not allow the mass displacement of Palestinians amidst the ongoing Gaza conflict. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badir Abdelhadi condemned what he termed genocide against the Palestinian people during a press briefing in Nicosia, Cyprus. This statement highlights a deep-seated fear in the region of a repeat of historical displacement events, like the Nakba in 1948. This adds a significant political and humanitarian dimension to any potential large-scale population movement out of Gaza.
History casting a long shadow.
Indeed. The insight here is that while the conflict is centered in Gaza, its implications resonate deeply across neighboring countries, directly influencing their foreign policy and security concerns.
And diplomatic friction with Israel is also escalating on other fronts. Israel firmly rejected a proposed visit by French President Emmanuel Macron. Why? Because of his stated intention to formally recognize Palestinian statehood.
That's right. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar communicated that as long as France continues this initiative, there is no room for Macron's visit. He asserted that recognizing Palestine would threaten Israel's security and labeled Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas as not a reliable partner for dialogue. This signals a clear red line for Israel regarding international diplomatic pressure on the issue of statehood.
So recognition is off the table for now, from Israel's perspective.
It appears so. And adding to this diplomatic complexity, the United Nations Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, strongly criticized recent sanctions imposed by the United States on Palestinian non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. He called for their immediate revocation. Turk referred to the sanctions as unacceptable, emphasizing the critical role these organizations, like Al-Haq and the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, play in human rights advocacy.
Why did the U.S. sanction them?
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio justified the sanctions by claiming these NGOs directly supported the International Criminal Court's, or ICC, investigations into Israeli officials. This aligns with the U.S. government's long-standing opposition to ICC actions against Israel or its citizens. Turk warned of a potential chilling effect on human rights advocacy globally. The insight is that the conflict isn't just military and humanitarian, it's deeply enmeshed in a battle over international law, diplomatic recognition, and the legitimacy of human rights organizations, highlighting the profound fragmentation of international consensus on these issues.
Subsection. Shifting global power dynamics. The global stage feels like a giant chessboard right now, doesn't it? Major powers constantly shifting their strategies and alliances. China, for instance, is openly accusing the European Union of stoking confrontation.
Indeed. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun criticized the EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, after she described a recent meeting in Tianjin, China, attended by leaders from China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, as a direct challenge to the international system built on rules. Guo characterized Kallas's remarks as ideologically biased and disrespectful to World War II history, arguing they exacerbate rivalry. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping advocated for a new global governance system predicated on mutual respect and opposition to Western dominance, a view supported by Russian President Vladimir Putin. This reflects a clear pushback against the existing, largely Western-led international order. The insight here is that a significant bloc of nations is actively attempting to reshape global governance principles, moving away from what they see as a unipolar, rule-based system towards one that emphasizes multipolar respect and challenges Western primacy. This is fundamentally altering diplomatic dynamics.
It definitely feels like a tectonic shift. And in the United States, President Donald Trump remarked that the U.S. has, and I quote, lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China, following that meeting among leaders from these countries at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, summit in Tianjin. It's a classic Trumpian turn of phrase, maybe a bit hyperbolic.
Still I chuckle, perhaps.
But it does highlight a genuine concern we're seeing in some U.S. circles about shifting global alliances and the potential for a new world order. Trump's comments reflect broader U.S. anxiety regarding these shifts, as he perceives the growing ties between these nations and China as detrimental to U.S. interests. He somewhat resignedly wished the trio a long and prosperous future together. India's foreign ministry, for its part, chose not to comment further, highlighting the diplomatic sensitivity.
Well, from Russia's perspective, President Vladimir Putin recently expressed openness to economic cooperation with the United States, emphasizing that Russia's foreign policy is characterized by pragmatism and openness to diplomatic engagement with both the East and West. He used the metaphor of the two-headed eagle, highlighting that Russia isn't abandoning any potential partnerships. He even cited concrete examples of potential cooperation, things like joint energy projects in Alaska with American companies and trilateral ventures in the Arctic involving Russia, the U.S., and China, suggesting these could help mitigate geopolitical tensions. The recent Anchorage summit, the first between U.S. and Russian leaders since the Ukraine conflict began, signaled that dialogue, however limited, remains possible. Putin reiterated that Russia's diplomatic approach is multipolar, preferring flexibility, directly countering claims it has lost to China. He clarified that the SCO aims not at opposing other nations, but at fostering what they see as a more equitable global order. The insight here is that Russia is actively cultivating an image of strategic independence, positioning itself as a pivotal bridge or balancer in a multipolar world, rather than being subsumed by any single alliance. This complicates Western efforts to isolate it.
This economic realignment is certainly visible in global trade patterns, especially with energy. India's imports of Russian oil increased by 5.6% in August, reaching 1.6 million barrels per day. Russian crude now constitutes 37% of India's total oil imports. That's up from 33% the previous month.
Yeah, and this surge is happening even as the U.S., Iraq, and Saudi Arabia see declines in their oil supplies to India, largely attributed to diminishing domestic demand in India itself.
And the U.S. response? A 25% punitive tariff on India due to these purchases. U.S. Trade Advisor Peter Navarro criticized India's reliance on Russian oil, suggesting it was a means for the Kremlin to profit from India's refining capabilities.
But Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar defended the nation's stance, reiterating that the purchase of Indian refined oil products is voluntary for buyers in the market, including those in Europe and the U.S.
Right, so India buys Russian crude, refines it, and sells the products on the open market.
Exactly. What's truly fascinating here is how fundamental economic realities and the imperative of energy security are reshaping traditional alliances and, in some cases, creating new frictions even among allies. The insight is that national self-interest, particularly in critical resources like energy, can override established diplomatic alignments, leading to a more complex and fragmented global trade landscape. It raises that important question. Are we witnessing the fragmentation of existing economic blocs or merely a temporary realignment in response to immediate needs?
Hashtag subsection. Latin American challenges. Shifting our focus now to Latin America, we're seeing some significant challenges both in terms of international relations and human rights within countries. Tensions between Venezuela and the United States have spiked again quite dramatically, it seems.
Yes, the Pentagon described a recent incident as highly provocative. Apparently, 2 Venezuelan military aircraft, specifically F-16 fighter jets, flew perilously close to a United States Navy ship, the guided missile destroyer Jason Dunham. This happened while the U.S. ship was operating in international waters near the southern Caribbean Sea. The Defense Department issued a stern warning to the Maduro regime in Venezuela, accusing them of attempting to interfere with American counter-narcotics and counterterrorism operations.
When were they there?
The U.S. has recently enhanced its naval presence in Caribbean waters, specifically to combat drug trafficking, which it attributes, at least in part, to the Venezuelan government. In response, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced the first activation of the country's national militia, claiming it was a necessary defense against what he called an aggressive U.S. posture.
So accusations flying back and forth.
Yes. The U.S. has accused Maduro of drug cartel connections, allegations Caracas vehemently denies. Venezuela, in turn, has accused the U.S. of extrajudicial killings after a U.S. airstrike. The insight here is that this incident reflects a classic tit-for-tat escalation. Each side perceives the other's actions as aggressive, leading to a dangerous cycle of military posturing and accusations that risk wider destabilization in an already sensitive region.
It sounds like a deeply entrenched, dangerous game of brinkmanship indeed. And then, a really concerning human rights issue emerging from El Salvador.
Yes, on August 22nd, the Legislative Assembly of El Salvador, which is dominated by President Nayib Bukele's Nuevas Ideas party, passed a reform. This reform extends the detention of over 88,000 individuals arrested during a state of emergency for up to 5 years without trial.
5 years without trial for 88,000 people.
That's the report. This amendment to the special law against organized crime has drawn sharp criticism from human rights organizations. They argue it effectively legalizes anticipated prison sentences and profoundly undermines the justice system. The state of emergency itself, initiated back in March 2022 in response to a spike in gang violence, has allowed for indefinite detention, suspending constitutional rights like the right to a defense. Troubling reports of abuses, torture, and even deaths of detainees in custody have also emerged.
That sounds fundamentally at odds with basic human rights and due process. What's the government's justification?
Ruling party officials assert the reform aims to expedite the judicial process for the unprecedented number of arrests. They frame it as necessary to address the country's serious gang violence problem.
But the opposition disagrees.
Opposition voices believe the government is failing to deliver actual justice, and that this is a shortcut with severe human consequences. And think about the families they now face significant economic burden supporting their incarcerated relatives, as the state apparently does not provide sustenance for these detainees. It's a truly dire situation for many ordinary citizens caught in this dragnet. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a clear and troubling tension between national security concerns and fundamental human rights. The insight is that in the pursuit of order and public safety, governments can erode the very foundations of a just society, arguably crossing the line into authoritarianism when due process is sacrificed for efficiency. This raises an important question. At what point would the long-term consequences for civil liberties and democratic norms outweigh the immediate gains in crime reduction? And what kind of society is left in its wake?
Hashtag Section 3. Political currents and governance. Now let's bring it home, or at least closer to home for many listeners, with some significant political currents shaping governance in the UK and the US, and critical questions of human rights and accountability popping up around the world. Hashtag subsection. UK political shakeups. The United Kingdom has certainly seen its share of political drama recently. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner resigned from her position. This followed a scandal over unpaid taxes related to a flat she owned in Hove, England, and allegations of a potential breach of the ministerial code. The Prime Minister's standards advisor had launched an investigation into the matter.
Right. Rayner's candid admission regarding stamp duty, that's a tax on property purchases, sparked significant public discourse. It led to discussions about accountability among public officials and raised questions about her judgment, particularly for a high-profile Labour Party figure. Her resignation is seen as a critical blow to Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, who now faces the daunting task of reshuffling his cabinet and maintaining party unity, especially with a general election likely on the horizon.
And all the correspondence was made public.
Yes, the public correspondence between Rayner, the Prime Minister, and the ethics advisor was made public, offering a rare glimpse into the internal workings of such a crisis. The insight here is that even seemingly minor financial irregularities, relatively speaking, can trigger significant political fallout for prominent figures. This is especially true when questions of public trust and ministerial conduct are involved, highlighting the intense scrutiny faced by opposition leaders perceived as waiting in the wings for power.
It really is a classic political drama unfolding, isn't it? Where perception often battles reality. And further fragmenting the UK political landscape, Nadine Dorries, a former Conservative Member of Parliament and government minister, announced her defection from the Conservative Party to Reform UK. She declared that the Tory party is effectively dead.
Strong words. In a candid interview, Dorries urged party members to consider drastic changes in their political strategy and mindset. This reflects a growing sentiment among some conservatives that the party has lost its way, particularly after a long period in government. Her shift to Reform UK, which is seen as a more populist alternative, signifies a notable realignment in UK politics and highlights deep internal divisions within the Conservative Party itself, often between its more traditional conservative wing and those seeking a more radical, perhaps anti-establishment approach.
So discontent bubbling up.
It seems so. The insight here is that such high-profile defections indicate a potential fracturing of traditional party loyalty. It signals a broader shift in the political landscape where voters and politicians alike might be seeking alternatives to established parties more readily than in the past.
Hashtag subsection. U.S. domestic and political debates. Across the Atlantic, the United States domestic and political debates are, well, as always, a whirlwind of activity. The Trump administration has certainly been active with policy changes and proposals. The Pentagon, for instance, is reportedly considering renaming itself the Department of War from the current Department of Defense. White House officials state this is part of a broader effort to modernize military strategy and enhance operational capabilities.
Yeah, this potential renaming, it sparks profound discussions about military culture, recruitment, and the symbolic significance of war versus defense. A shift to Department of War could suggest a more proactive, perhaps even more aggressive approach to international relations. It could signal a fundamental change in how the U.S. projects its military power globally.
It's more than just a name change, though.
Absolutely. The insight here is that language matters, especially at the highest levels of government. A name change like this isn't merely semantic, it's potentially a powerful statement of strategic intent, reflecting a shift from a primarily defensive posture to one potentially geared towards more direct global intervention or presence.
That's a huge symbolic shift that would resonate far beyond Washington, D.C., I imagine. And on the domestic front, President Trump has also taken significant steps to limit the rights of federal workers. He signed executive orders that reportedly strip over 1 million federal employees of their right to collective bargaining.
This move has drawn sharp criticism from labor unions. They warn that it could lead to weakened democratic principles and significantly diminish worker protections within the federal government. The executive orders are seen by many as a direct challenge to the power of organized labor and a way to increase presidential control over the federal workforce.
So a push for more executive control.
That appears to be the interpretation from unions and critics. The insight here is that this action represents a broader ideological struggle over the role of government, the power of unions, and the balance of rights for public sector employees. It could have potential long-term implications for the federal bureaucracy and its ability to function independently of political pressures.
Hashtag subsection. Global governance and human rights. Beyond the UK and US, we're seeing critical developments in global governance and human rights around the world. A truly concerning report came out of the United States involving South Korean workers.
Yes, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, recently detained hundreds of undocumented workers, including South Koreans, at a Hyundai electric vehicle plant in the state of Georgia. The raid, reportedly involving at least 450 individuals, sparked immediate outrage from the South Korean government and public. They condemned it as an unjust infringement of people's rights.
That sounds serious.
It is. This incident raises broader concerns about the treatment of immigrant workers, the implementation of immigration policy, and labor practices within international corporations operating in the U.S. It directly impacts Hyundai's operations and could potentially strain U.S.-South Korea economic partnerships. The insight here is that the complexities of global supply chains and international labor, set against a backdrop of tightening immigration policies, present a real challenge for human rights and diplomatic relations. It often creates friction between allied nations when domestic policies have significant international repercussions.
That sounds like a significant diplomatic incident brewing, not just a local law enforcement action. And speaking of law enforcement and justice departments, a startling revelation recently emerged in the United States regarding the Department of Justice.
Indeed. Joseph Schnitt, who was the acting deputy chief in Attorney General Pam Bondi's Department of Justice, was secretly filmed by the O'Keefe Media Group, an undercover journalism outlet. In the video, he appears to be boasting about plans to manipulate records related to Jeffrey Epstein's client list, should he get the chance.
Manipulate how?
In this undercover sting footage, Schnitt candidly discussed intentions to potentially redact every Republican from Epstein's client details.
Wow.
This immediately raises serious ethical concerns about transparency, political influence, and the integrity of the Department of Justice itself. The insight here is that such allegations, if proven true, underscore a deep vulnerability within democratic institutions to political manipulation and selective enforcement. It could potentially erode public trust in the impartiality of justice and highlights the ongoing battle for transparency and accountability at the highest levels of government.
#, Section 4, Economic Currents and Financial Outlook. Okay, from the intricacies of global politics and governance, let's turn our attention now to the driving force behind so much of what happens in the world: economic currents and the financial outlook. We've got quite a mix of stories today, from national job reports and large-scale infrastructure projects to corporate strategies and global financial pressures. #, subsection, market indicators and corporate strategy. Well, we've got a U.S. jobs report for August that's quite anemic, to put it mildly. Unemployment is creeping up, and the White House is taking shots at the Federal Reserve. You have to wonder if all this economic turbulence is setting the stage for bigger shifts in monetary policy. The latest jobs report revealed that the U.S. economy added only 22,000 jobs in August. That's significantly below expectations, signaling a continued slowdown in the labor market. Unemployment also ticked up to levels not seen in nearly 4 years.
Yeah, this anemic job growth is indeed widely expected to lead the Federal Reserve to implement an interest rate cut at its upcoming meeting this month. The Trump administration has openly criticized Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, blaming him for not taking action sooner to stimulate the economy. This report also coincides with the recent firing of a commissioner by President Trump, highlighting the intertwining of political decisions and economic outcomes, and the pressure sometimes applied to independent economic institutions.
So the pressure's on the Fed.
It certainly appears so. The insight here is that the labor market, often seen as a key economic indicator, is showing clear signs of cooling. This not only impacts individual livelihoods, but also signals a likely shift in broader monetary policy, with potentially significant political ramifications.
Meanwhile, on a completely different economic trajectory, India is set to make a massive infrastructure investment. We're talking $125 billion to expand its high-speed road network by over 10,000 miles.
That's a huge undertaking. Currently, less than 3,000 miles of India's 90,000-mile highway system meet high-speed standards.
Right, so this ambitious initiative, projected to enable travel speeds of up to 75 miles per hour, aims to modernize infrastructure and significantly reduce logistics costs. Approximately 40% of this new network is already under construction, slated for completion by 2030, with work on the remaining roads expected to begin in 3 years for completion by 2033.
And this aligns with India's broader goal of decreasing logistics costs from around 14% down to 8% of its gross domestic product, or GDP. This is crucial for supporting its rapid economic growth.
How will they fund it?
Funding will likely come through a public-private partnership approach, combining government investment with private sector capital. This kind of strategic infrastructure investment is truly transformative. It can have a profound impact on national economic efficiency, global competitiveness, and the quality of life for its citizens by enabling faster movement of goods and people. The insight here is that for rapidly developing economies like India, investing in foundational infrastructure isn't just about growth. It's about optimizing efficiency and reducing the structural costs of doing business. That's critical for long-term sustainable development and for cementing its position as a global economic power.
And turning to the electric vehicle, or EV sector, Rivian Automotive announced its second workforce reduction of the year. They laid off approximately 140 employees, which is about 1% of its total workforce. This is happening just ahead of the highly anticipated launch of its new R2 SUV.
Right. This decision aligns with the company's ongoing efforts to streamline operations and enhance manufacturing efficiency. They're preparing for the production of their more affordable SUV model, which is said to hit the market in 2026. These layoffs are part of a broader strategy to manage costs amid what is a challenging economic landscape for electric vehicle manufacturers. The competitive EV market is seeing slower growth in consumer interest than maybe initially projected.
Growing pains for the EV market.
You could say that. This highlights the intense pressures within the sector. Even innovative companies like Rivian are forced to make tough decisions to try and achieve profitability amidst slowing consumer demand and fierce competition. The insight is that the EV industry is maturing beyond its initial high-growth, maybe hype-driven phase. The focus is now squarely on cost efficiency and market differentiation to survive and thrive. It could indicate a consolidation period may be ahead for the industry.
Conversely, though, Tesla is making headlines with a potentially enormous new pay package for Elon Musk. It could, theoretically, make him the world's first trillionaire, potentially yielding him up to $1 trillion over the next decade.
It's a staggering number. This proposal involves incredibly aggressive performance targets that could reposition Tesla not just as an electric vehicle manufacturer, but as a powerhouse in multiple other sectors, including AI and robotics. The package's structure emphasizes significant milestones related to production and market expansion. It reflects immense confidence in future growth, but also, you have to say, considerable risk.
$1 trillion.
This staggering pay package, if realized, would redefine individual wealth. It's predicated on Tesla achieving extraordinary multi-sector dominance. The insight here is that such an aggressive incentive structure reflects a high-stakes bet not just on a single company, but on the transformative potential of interconnected technologies like AI, robotics, and sustainable energy. The rewards for pioneering leaders could be unprecedented, yet it also fuels debates about wealth concentration and corporate governance.
##### subsection. Global financial pressures. Beyond individual corporate stories, global financial pressures continue to shape international relations. Iran's economy, for instance, is already struggling under the weight of existing sanctions, and there is the potential reactivation of even more sanctions looming.
Yes, the potential reactivation of United Nations sanctions against Iran via the snapback mechanism instigated by France, the UK, and Germany could further exacerbate the nation's already struggling economy. This would effectively lift previous waivers that allowed limited trade, leading to tighter restrictions across various sectors. Analysts predict this could lead to increased inflation, more unemployment, and diminished access to essential goods for Iranians who are already facing significant hardships.
Why are they doing this now?
The stated intention is to pressure Iran to adhere to its nuclear commitments under the original deal, the JCPOA, or Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or to negotiate a new one. The insight here is that economic sanctions are a powerful, often brutal tool of international diplomacy. They're capable of profoundly impacting a nation's economy and its citizens' quality of life, demonstrating the direct link between geopolitical objectives and, unfortunately, human welfare.
And switching gears to the digital economy, China is facing a complex dilemma with the rise of stablecoins. Most of these, as you know, are currently pegged to the US dollar. Beijing remains wary of cryptocurrency risks and, perhaps more significantly, the potential erosion of its strict capital controls.
Right. Beijing is certainly testing the waters with new regulations in Hong Kong, allowing some crypto activity there. But concerns about capital flight and financial stability persist across mainland China. Analysts suggest that a yuan-backed stablecoin could potentially facilitate cross-border transactions and enhance the yuan's international presence as an alternative to the US dollar.
But China already has its own digital currency project.
Exactly. China's ongoing Digital Yuan Initiative, the ECNY, significantly complicates this landscape. The government likely fears competition from private stablecoins, which could undermine its central bank digital currency efforts. Any future release of yuan stablecoins would almost certainly be tightly regulated and limited to specific pilot regions initially. The insight here is that nations are navigating a very delicate balance. They want to embrace digital financial innovation for economic advantage, but they also want to maintain national security through regulatory control, particularly when it comes to currencies that could challenge existing financial hierarchies and capital controls. It's a tricky path to walk.
Hashtag tag tag section 5, health and environmental realities. Finally, let's explore some critical realities impacting public health and our planet. These are issues that affect us all, regardless of where we live, and they often highlight systemic challenges and emerging threats. Hashtag tag 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 subsection, public health challenges. This first story is quite sobering, frankly. Another Ebola outbreak has been declared in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or DR Congo, and it's compounded by ongoing conflict in the region. It's just a stark reminder of these persistent health crises that often get overshadowed by other global events.
It really is. The DR Congo has declared a new outbreak of the Zaire strain of the Ebola virus in the Kasai province. There are at least 16 confirmed deaths reported, including, tragically, 4 health workers and 28 suspected cases. The estimated case fatality rate is a terrifying 57%. This marks the 16th recorded Ebola epidemic in the country. Yes. The government has deployed rapid response teams, with support from the World Health Organization, or WHO, to enhance epidemiological surveillance and establish triage and isolation facilities. Ebola, as you know, is a highly contagious hemorrhagic fever spread through contact with bodily fluids. WHO is sending 2 tons of supplies, including personal protective equipment and vaccines. But crucially, the country's ongoing armed conflict in its eastern provinces adds significantly to the challenges of containing the virus. It makes humanitarian access and public health interventions incredibly difficult and dangerous for aid workers.
So the conflict makes the health crisis even harder to fight.
Exactly. The insight here is that public health crises like Ebola are often not just medical emergencies. They're deeply intertwined with geopolitical instability and conflict. The inability to deliver aid and contain outbreaks is massively exacerbated by ongoing violence and insecurity.
That's an incredibly difficult situation where conflict makes a health crisis even more deadly. And closer to home, quite literally for some listeners, we're seeing issues with basic health monitoring technology in England. Recent reports indicate that errors found in diabetes analysis machines are causing significant concern for healthcare providers there. It's requiring at least 55,000 patients to undergo additional hospital tests due to inaccuracies.
Yeah, 55,000 patients. This situation apparently arises from critical oversights in the calibration and maintenance of the equipment used to monitor and assess diabetes management. It highlights potential risks to patients who rely heavily on technology for their health assessments and raises serious questions about the robustness of healthcare technology and the monitoring systems that are supposed to ensure accuracy.
It shakes your faith in the tech a bit.
It can. The insight is that even in advanced healthcare systems, a fundamental breakdown in equipment calibration and oversight can have widespread consequences, affecting tens of thousands of patients and potentially undermining trust in diagnostic technologies that people depend on daily.
That's a huge number of people affected by equipment errors, which really speaks to a systemic vulnerability. And a more insidious public health challenge seems to be emerging from our digital lives, specifically impacting teenagers. Parents have recounted harrowing experiences concerning their school-aged children who have purchased spice-laced vape liquids through the social media app Snapchat. It highlights a growing concern over minors' accessibility to dangerous substances via these platforms.
It's deeply worrying. Parents expressed extreme fears, with one mother quoted considering the distressing thought of finding her daughter dead due to these synthetic cannabinoid-laced products. Spice can be incredibly dangerous and unpredictable. This amplifies calls for more stringent regulations on the sale and distribution of vaping products, especially online, and stricter social media oversight. Many teens are tragically unaware of the serious health consequences of these synthetic cannabinoids.
They think it's just vaping.
Exactly. The insight here is that as social media becomes an increasingly prevalent platform for commerce and communication among young people, it also presents new, often unregulated avenues for the distribution of harmful substances. This creates a significant public health challenge that demands a multi-pronged approach involving tech companies, regulators, educators, and parents.
Hashtag subsection, climate and natural world. Now let's turn to our planet itself, which is facing unprecedented challenges, particularly from climate change. Wildfires, for example, are becoming a growing concern, and their impact isn't just local anymore, they're affecting global air pollution.
That's right. The United Nations World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, has released a report highlighting the significant impact of climate change-driven wildfires on global air quality. These increasingly frequent and intense wildfires release what the report calls a witch's brew of harmful pollutants. This includes fine particulate matter, often referred to as PM 2.5. These are tiny airborne particles that can deeply penetrate our lungs and bloodstream.
Nasty stuff.
Very. These pollutants pose serious risks to health and infrastructure, not just locally, but potentially thousands of miles away through atmospheric transport. We've seen examples with massive wildfires in the Amazon, Canada, and Siberia, affecting air quality far afield. Air pollution, broadly speaking, contributes to over 4.5 million premature deaths annually worldwide.
That's a staggering number.
It is. The insight here is that climate change is transforming localized disasters like wildfires into global air quality crises. It demonstrates how interconnected our planet's systems are and demands a unified international approach to address both climate change and air pollution holistically.
What's truly striking is that global reach smoke from one continent affecting air quality on another. That's a powerful visual reminder of our shared atmosphere. And in a region already grappling with immense challenges, Sudan is now dealing with compounded crises. The ongoing civil war there is being exacerbated by natural disasters, specifically heavy monsoon rains.
Yes, it's a tragic situation. These rains caused landslides, displacing approximately 150 individuals recently, with humanitarian teams dispatching aid to about 750 impacted people in Sudan. Compounding this, cholera outbreaks are surging. In North Darfur, there are nearly 8,000 reported cases since May, and in South Darfur, over 3,800 cases. These outbreaks are significantly linked to worsening malnutrition rates, which have reportedly doubled in North Darfur, severely impacting children. The UN Secretary-General has called for an immediate ceasefire in El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, where civilians remain trapped by fighting.
It's just one crisis piling on top of another.
Exactly. The insight here is that humanitarian crises are rarely singular events. They often represent a devastating convergence of conflict, climate impacts, and disease outbreaks. This creates an almost unimaginable catastrophe that overwhelms local capacities and demands urgent, coordinated international intervention, often amidst extreme logistical and security challenges.
That's a truly heartbreaking cascade of disasters. And finally today, perhaps on a slightly less dire but still important note, a word of caution about what we see online, especially during times of crisis and natural disaster.
Yes, this is becoming increasingly critical. Amid severe flooding in Pakistan and India due to heavy monsoon rains, misinformation is reportedly rampant online, with false footage circulating on social media platforms. Many videos, including one claiming to show a train stranded in Patna, India, were identified as AI-generated. They displayed typical AI errors like unnatural human figures or distorted background details.
So deepfakes or AI images being passed off as real.
Precisely. Another example, a video of a van being swept away by water presented as current flooding in Lahore, Pakistan, was actually footage from a fatal incident in Iran back in 2022. Another erroneous claim involved footage of a dramatic cloudburst presented as occurring in Pakistan, but it was actually seen filmed in Australia in 2020. Officials are urging critical evaluation of all such content shared online.
It's getting harder to tell what's real.
It really is. The insight here is that in an age of generative AI, the distinction between reality and highly convincing fakes has blurred significantly, especially during times of crisis when emotions are high. The rapid spread of misinformation can not only cause unnecessary panic, but can also actively hinder genuine aid efforts and distort accurate public understanding of critical events. This raises a really important question for all of us. How do you discern reliable information in such a digitally saturated and potentially manipulated environment? #tag #AppOutDojo. So, as we've explored today, the accelerating pace of technological change, particularly in artificial intelligence and space exploration, it's mirrored by complex and, well, often tragic geopolitical shifts. Our global economy is navigating both these incredible innovative opportunities and significant pressures, while our planet and its inhabitants confront urgent, often intertwined health and environmental challenges.
Exactly. It really makes you think about how incredibly interconnected everything is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What we invent, how we govern ourselves, how we treat each other, and definitely how we treat our planet, it all comes back to us, one way or another. It's a lot to process, I know, but that's what these deep dives are all about. Trying to make sense of it all for you. So after this whirlwind of insights, What does this all mean for us personally? When AI can create images that distort reality, our data can potentially predict our health outcomes, and global conflicts can literally reroute our energy supply.
Hmm.
It begs the question, how do you stay informed and engaged in a world that's transforming at light speed? And maybe, what small piece of this vast interconnected puzzle are you going to dig into next?
Perhaps it's about developing a more critical lens, for discerning credible information, which we just talked about, or maybe actively trying to understand the ethical implications of the technologies we embrace every day. There's always more to learn, and arguably, that learning is our most powerful tool in navigating this complex world.